Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Livingston of Want Leverage Communications, a public relations and LinkedIn consultancy, back for another episode of PR Patter, my semi-weekly broadcast where I chat with the amazing people from across my marketing and public relations network. If you like what you see today, please go to my website and see about what we do at wantleverage.com. And don't forget to download our free tip sheet, Make Your C-Suite Stand Out on LinkedIn, as we're all about building executive visibility on the LinkedIn platform and building thought leadership. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Brett Spielberg to the broadcast. Hi, Brett.
Hi, Julie.
To tell you a little bit about him, he is the acting director of special programs and institutional advancement at Nassau Community College, primarily focusing on marketing, public relations, and strategic communications for the school. He previously held diverse communications positions in the Nassau County Controller's Office, the New York League of Conservation Voters, and an independent N-to-12 school on Long Island, New York. He started his career at Zimmerman Edelson, now known as ZE Creative Communications, as a copywriter after graduating from Adelphi University. I went there too for a short time with a BA in communications. He's also received his MPA from Penn State University. In 2021, Brett founded his own agency, 1991 Solutions, focusing on copywriting, digital marketing, and communication support with a goal of making marketing accessible and affordable for small businesses. He lives on Long Island with his wife, daughter, cat, and dog. How are you today,
I'm doing
Brett?
wonderful, Julie. Thank you so much for having me. It's great that you do this podcast really to talk about our industry and about all the things that are really happening on such a rapid basis. There's so many changes so often.
Oh my God. Every day is something new, which is why I still love it after all these years. I still find that I'm learning something new every day and trying something different and being able to experiment in a lot of different ways, which makes it really, it's refreshing.
Absolutely. And there's so much breadth to the topic. It's not just such a simple black and white issue. It's just something so exciting to be able to talk about and be able to learn about. So absolutely, really excited to join you today.
That's great. Well, in the notes that you shared with me before we're live today, you really used to evolve and change, but how are you?
Well, I'm seeing, when it comes to marketing, public relations, you're seeing so much really change in the industry, here on Long Island, especially. If you look at, public relations, just to start with, there used to be, Verizon Fios is another TV network here. So when you look at doing public relations, doing marketing, you know that you have this Rolodex of who you can call, who's out there to cover things. And as as digital media changes, as advertising changes, public relations changes, you have to really adapt to it. So now, you look at News 12, which has changed so much with Newsday. You look at that breadth, you look at the weekly papers that are here on Long Island that really have been struggling post-COVID and even pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Just seeing what that landscape, the media landscape is, it creates opportunities and challenges for marketers, for public relations people. It definitely changes the playbook from what you used to be able to do, your easy wins of how you can get coverage, to how you have to be more creative and think outside the box to be able to really achieve the outcomes that your clients are looking for, or that you're looking for. So definitely a big challenge, a big change when it comes to that, but it also opens the door for people to look at things a little bit differently. I know there are certainly folks that have focused on PR really a specific way for many years. And, you don't want to be caught in that same rut of, expecting, doing the same thing, expecting the outcome to happen. You really have to kind of pivot a little bit. And it really makes the whole industry a little more exciting, in my opinion, because it gives you, those opportunities. You have to create those opportunities for coverage and for marketing and advertising, rather than kind of just, checking the box like you used to be able to do in many opportunities.
So tell us about a typical day at Nassau Community College. What are you working on there that we should know about?
Oh, sure. Everything. So it's great. I work with a fantastic team in institutional advancement who have, really, really diverse experience, everything from, government relations to branding directors, creative directors, people who have worked in university settings for their whole careers. So someone like me who's stepping into university the first time, since college or since grad school, stepping in here on this other side as an administrator, It's really seeing how much really needs to get done on a daily basis. Everything from maintaining multiple social media channels, managing major marketing programs, working with different consultants who do everything from digital marketing, traditional marketing, and then all the vendors in between that you have to coordinate with. Plus, you have a vibrant campus here. You have thousands of students here every day, hundreds of staff members, faculty, other administrators. There's so many events that are happening on a daily basis, and trying to capture that slice of life, and maintain your presence here. So when I'm walking down, through the quad, and I see some students, I'll chat them up. I'll see what they're interested in. When are you graduating? What are you studying? Because you really want to keep your finger on the pulse. And I always ask them, what are you thinking about the school? I have my badge on at all times. So I'm like, I'm an administrator. Here's my name. Here's my card. You can always reach out to me. And I love asking students to take pictures and send pictures to us. Because what I've seen, especially when we promote ourselves externally, we put things on Instagram, the things that are most fun that people love, they love that nostalgia and they love that feeling of just of being there and seeing it. So
being a part of it all, right? Being part of the community.
Absolutely. So take pictures. If the trees are looking great today, if you have something fun with friends, just send it in. Send it in. We want to showcase it. We want to show it, and trying to help students feel that connection in a tangible way. Because, especially we're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-olds primarily. They've grown up with social media and they've grown up with technology. For them, this is part of their daily life. So when I say send me a picture for Instagram, they're not wondering, well, what do I have to do? They're like, they know exactly what that means. And, if anything, they're kind of teasing, well, why aren't you on TikTok? Why aren't you doing more on Snapchat? That's what we're really on now. And, there's a middle ground there. We're still, we're still a college, we're still an institution. We like to have fun and show really the great things that are happening here. We also maintain our professionalism. There's that fine line that you walk as a marketer, where you can be creative, you can be fun, but you also maintain your brand. And you have to maintain that authority for your brand, especially as a university, a college here. On Long Island, the largest community college, really, I think, in the entire New York State community college system.
Is that right?
One of the premier community colleges, really, in the country. If you talk to anyone who's went here, they'll talk about their professors, the professors who are doing work just like any university. And then, there's plenty of crisis constantly in the news as well. So working with our community and government relations team about everything from CBAs and union negotiations to major projects. We've had some wins, we've had some losses. We've really tried to balance that, and really, even when something doesn't go the way that was planned, maybe by the board of trustees or by a strategic direction, there's still always a way to find the opportunity there. So as we look at our campus and what the future of the campus will be, there's just so much. So it's hard to just pin you down at what my schedule is every day, because it changes every day, always so different. And it's so great because it lets me connect with so many people here, with people who are also working in communications, in government, in education, in so many different industries, because the community college touches so many different walks of life. So I get to really stay apprised of, in the hospitality industry and in the workforce development side of, how the welding program, electrical program we're going to be starting. There's so many interesting people to be able to meet on a daily basis. And being part of the SUNY system, it's great because you have so many other resources of, so many universities across the state, and all the different perspectives, all the different programs. And as a community college, we're here to partner. We're here to help our students get their associate's degree and move on and continue on and get their bachelor's degree, get their master's, get their PhDs, and come back here and speak at commencement.
That's really interesting that the school is now offering a lot of technical training.
It's a big piece. Education is really changing. We see, traditional education shifted a lot, with remote education. I got my master's remotely. I got it through Penn State University, entirely remotely.
Really?
But that's not for everybody. Some people need that in person. Some people prefer the remote. And there are a lot of students now, especially who lived through COVID, who had so many issues that it brought to people, just socially, how they learn, being able to teach people experientially to work with their hands. We're seeing a really big resurgence of people looking for technical training. And I think the college is a great resource to partner with, some public high schools, to partner with the BOCES program. It's a great opportunity here to be able to really be like a hub of education. And education always isn't out of a textbook. Education can be through your hands. And that's, I think, marketing.
And we need those people. We need those service providers, big time.
And similarly, but marketing, to say that, you need to learn with your hands for marketing too. So much of what's taught in the textbooks about advertising, marketing, PR, it might be a generation behind in some ways. So trying to stay on that cutting edge and staying innovative. That's why I think, especially digital marketing, there's some really interesting programs that are kind of sprouting up out there that I've heard about, of how they can kind of reinvent what a marketing program is for education. So you're learning much more experientially. You're learning much more of what's really happening day to day, and not just kind of,
Yeah.
memorizing a textbook and, and
Yeah.
doing word associations.
So tell me a little bit. I'm interested in to know how the college is using TikTok.
So we're not using TikTok yet.
Oh,
And
you're
that's
not
that's
using
one
it
piece.
yet. Okay.
That's what the students will tell me, that why, TikTok is where they're on more than
Okay.
Instagram now.
Okay.
But it's one of those, especially with all the, the geopolitical factors, jumping into TikTok right now, it's something definitely we talk about and think about. But especially it's getting our content to be friendly for something like that. I think
Yeah.
especially in an institution, you can just start a TikTok, but then you make one post and then you sit there. I'm sure anyone's seen this in marketing. You have this ambitious idea, you start it, and then you go, well, how am I going to do this every week?
You got to
So
keep it
for
up.
us, Instagram has a good, crossover with TikTok, especially with Reels. So trying to work at the ground floor of helping teach, whether it's students, it's program directors, grant directors, professors. We want to see your program. We want to see it. We want to see it in this engaging way that people really are seeing success with on social media.
I mean, I don't want to shock you, but I was actually in a TikTok video that went viral, got over 1 million views. It was somebody from Good Work. I don't know if you know that comedy channel. Contacted me to participate in a video about a LinkedIn game show, because I'm a LinkedIn expert, to do where I was the judge, and I had to judge these panelists about who wrote the best LinkedIn post. And one of the panelists was AI. And it was hilarious. It was so funny. I couldn't help I was almost crying. I was trying to hold in the laughter so much. But anyway, I never thought I could be somebody who'd be going viral on TikTok. Tell me about, you mentioned about making digital marketing something bite-sized. So explain what you meant by that, Brett.
Absolutely. So that's when I started my business. So through my career, you kind of gave a background to me where I started out as a journalist, actually, was what I studied at Adelphi. I ran the newspaper at Adelphi, but then I had a great opportunity as a copywriter at Zimmerman Edelson, now ZE Creative Communications. I kind of worked my way through there, learning from copywriting, newsletters, a lot of traditional PR, but also on that piece of, they were trying to push the envelope, and they still are. They're a great company. And what they've done, from social media, and then not just doing a social media post, but how do you create a hyper-local campaign? And then how do you really drill that down into a specific area? How do you get those results and outcomes? And as I've kind of taken that through my career, getting into government and nonprofits and bouncing around, seeing that in all these different scenarios, you work with, marketing consultants, you have marketing directors, you have all the different people who ask questions about marketing, and everyone's always very confused. Everyone's always very defensive. It's something that's often intangible. I hate to say it, I've seen pitches where it's like, I'm not looking at the snake oil here. I want to know what's really happening. And what I found is how to try and put, not just honesty, but that bite-sized piece into digital marketing is, what does this really mean? Like to set expectations, clear expectations for a client, for someone doing it, that, you could do this, here's what to expect, here's how to do it. Because so often you have this ambitious, like an ambitious project, an ambitious idea of how to do it, and you're being pulled in so many directions. You're trying to fit in every different box. You're trying to make sure to do every single piece of it. And it's like, how do you try and simplify something like this? So when I work with one of my clients and they say, we want to, we have Google Ads, but we also want to update our Google Ads. So, okay, so let's talk about our Google Ads. Let's look at what you're doing. Let's look at your keywords, performance max, all the different ways we can optimize this. And then they go, well, what else should I be doing? It's like, well, there's so many things. It's not an easy answer to say, what else could I be doing?
No, absolutely. It opens up Pandora's box.
And then that client will go, well, I want all of it. Like, if, I need to make more money on my business.
You can't do it all.
And so how do you kind of figure out and show, demonstrate you're doing something, show progress incrementally? Because people need to understand, you can't just expect here's the check. I want to do my marketing. Now I'm going viral. I have 10 million followers. I'm being invited to Good Morning America. It's like, no, you need to build this. This is a real, it's like people talk about SEO and it's like brushing your teeth. People talk about Google Ads and these are the day-by-day things you need to do to keep your brand active and working. So, but it's a reassurance and it's building trust with clients to understand that, This is, make it bite-sized. Don't look at this as this giant mega project.
It's overwhelming.
It's too
It's
overwhelming.
absolutely overwhelming. And you have to think about your budget too. I mean, how much do you have to
Exactly.
spend on all of this?
And when they say that, and they say, okay, I'm spending this right now, I'm willing to spend another 20%. I want to do this, this, and this. It's like, well, let's start with just one of them. Let's track it for 2 or 3 months. Let's see how it's performing. And then we can know, now let's see if we can add something else in. Do we shift the budget a little bit? Maybe you have more budget now. But it's tough. And I feel bad for business owners who aren't really schooled on it. I know, especially I speak to a lot of restaurant owners who they just want a one-size-fits-all solution for everything. They just want, I want more customers, I want the menu updated whenever I want, but websites look good. And they don't have the bandwidth for it. They're too busy. They're working 16 hours a day to keep their business going. And they don't have the budget. They don't have an extra 20% to spend on marketing. So they're cutting corners, but they're doing what's true to them. So when I speak to folks, it's how do you make this reasonable for someone? How do you make it fair? And it's tough because you see some fantastic businesses out there that want to do these great things. They might have the budget for it, and you try and find that middle ground for them. And very often you see it's tough to pull the trigger because, their money, their time is precious because they have to invest it into so many different avenues.
Yeah, and you want to use it. I think it's a smart strategy, to think in bite sizes. What can you do, and how well can you do it?
Right, because you could do one thing really well. That might be all you need. You might be able to really minimize your budget if you have a great thing you're working on. And you might try something, and you might do Google ads, and they might just not work. It might not be working for you and delivering the conversions you need. And that's not the end of the world. As the marketer, I feel terrible. I'm stressed. I'm trying to find the data to explain why it's not working. But that's the reality. Not everything's going to always work. It's not a one size fits all. So being able to pivot, being able to have options, being able to kind of rank choice your options, and then, really knowing your budget, because it's very easy to spend. It's not easy to get it back. That's what they're spending to make money. So if they spend it and they're not seeing the results, and this is a capitalism, right? They could say, well, I can't advertise anymore.
Yeah.
And it's for them, they're cutting off they're hurting themselves in the long run, very likely. But in the short term, they got to make payroll. They got to make sure they have their supplies. So you have to make sure you balance that, and you build that trust, you build those expectations, and you keep it bite-sized, because you can take a lot of bites. And over time, there are a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different things you can do, but take it like one bite at a time, and you find what works for you, what tastes good for you, what doesn't taste good for you. And then, then you kind of have your portfolio of what marketing is. And then if you build that trust as a marketer, you have a great opportunity now. You have a great partnership. You've built something that you can kind of keep sustaining. You really know it as you built it over time. It wasn't like you crashed, it wasn't a crash course. This was something that you really were able to develop. And now you're your own expert on a unique niche part of marketing. But there's so many different niches within the industry. It's not like just being a generalist.
No, not at all. Not at all. You talk about the perils of AI. Now I can speak for myself. I'm using it on a regular basis for different things, for ideation, for to get a first draft of something going that I then customize. But why do you talk about it in that way? Well, sounds dangerous.
There's levels of it. I'm definitely, I use it a little bit too. I'll say I dabble with it to help with ideation, with some outlining, especially if you write a blog, you get some extra tips of how to, keywords. But I've seen it. I was doing copywriting through my business, was working with a fantastic company for about a year and a half. A lot of fun with them. I don't want to get too specifics. I'm not putting them on blast, because they are still a fantastic company. I love them personally. But after about a year and a half, they said, this ChatGPT thing is really all the buzz. So we took everything you've ever done on LinkedIn and we put it all over ChatGPT, and we're going to see if that can give us a content calendar for the next year. We'll reach out to you if there's anything really unique that we don't trust the AI for. And honestly, I haven't heard from them. So they must be having success with AI, and that's totally fine with them.
That's crazy.
I keep up with their LinkedIn. I do see it. It is definitely AI. As someone who does it for a living, you can tell when there's too much AI. It's okay to have a little bit. It's okay to have that extra, that boost, because it's there. Technology is technology. But at a certain point, you're like, you really should have someone who has your voice internally, who's really there. It doesn't need to be me. But there still needs to be that real personal presence, I feel like, in marketing. I think the real peril of AI is that, as we see outsourcing, as we see jobs get cut, I'm worried that mid-level marketing, that mid-level associate copywriter job is just going to sort of kind of go to the wayside of like, well, we can hire a junior copywriter. They're very cheap. We're just training them up. They're going to go somewhere else anyway. We don't need to promote them to that copywriter job. We don't need to hire a copywriter. We'll just put it in AI. And that's a huge piece of the industry. It's a huge training ground for like the next generation of people doing PR.
Absolutely, sure.
And if they're kind of getting squeezed out because companies can save, companies got to save money. It's a tough economy, but we're not talking about cutting, CEO. The CEOs aren't cutting their salaries. They're if anything, they're getting the bonus because they're using AI. So if we can find a way that, you really want to develop PR, you want people who are ethical, who have worked in the industry, who have experience, because the risk is if you kind of lose that middle ground, you're only going to have, people who have that connection, who have the hook, who are really going to get up to the next level. You're going to have a lot of people struggling on the bottom side of it who don't get that next boost. And what happens 20, 30 years from now when we have a bunch of hacks doing PR? We need people who know what they're doing.
The other thing is the whole differentiation factor. AI doesn't necessarily know the competitive landscape and how your brand is a singular thing. How are you going to make it stand out?
You can tell AI that I want you to focus on writing it in XYZ way, but even still, I've seen the things where they say, take this picture and just send me this picture back. And they do it 10 times and it's a totally different picture after the third or fourth picture. AI has a mind of its own. It's still learning. It's still in an infantile youth space, as everyone talks about it. It's ingenious and it definitely is revolutionary, but we have to be mindful of it. And I think especially for people in PR, it's too often people could just say, I'm just going to use that. I can stay in my pajamas. I don't have to write the blog anymore. I can just give me 750 words that are very good in SEO about XYZ. And then they just do a quick proofread on it and then put it back in and say, now rewrite it again. And now they have a blog. And people really are doing that. I know people are doing that. I know people are whispering about it, that it works. Sometimes the clients even like it better than when they do it. And it's frustrating. But, this is the thing we have to, aspire to persevere.
Yeah, but it's not going to work every time. And it's just not the same as having that human input and that human touch.
Absolutely. I mean, in my opinion, there's a level of strategy that it just can't provide on such a variable basis. It might be an encyclopedia, but there is no encyclopedia that tells any unique client how to do something so unique that they need to do for their brand.
Yeah.
And you just can't find that the way out.
No. Brett, I was wondering if you could share some thoughts on like a case study of something that you've done for a client in the digital realm that you could share with us.
Sure. So what I've been working on recently, I've been working with a medical office actually on really revitalizing their digital marketing. So they had in the past, as talking with them, they had worked with several different firms, mostly overseas, to do their Google ads, to do their SEO, to do their website development, to do their blog writing. And they felt it was just overwhelming. How do you manage a full team? How do you manage a business when you're also trying to manage 4 different vendors for one thing? So coming in there saying, I understood what their perspective was, what their struggles were, and what their goals are, what their outcomes are, what they're looking for. So it's a combination of, what's not broke, let's not fix it, but let's optimize things, let's tweak things. So we started out doing a full soup to nuts on their SEO, and we saw that no one had touched their SEO since the website was developed. And also it was developed, the SEO was done by the web developer. So it wasn't done exactly the way it should have been. So it did, there were some little growing pains in the very beginning, certain URLs just didn't reflect the certain keywords that were needed. So certain URLs have to change. Now there's broken links, making sure things are all linked the right way. Take apart the website, put it back together just to make sure it's SEO up, modified. So that piece of it, which is a pretty big endeavor. You have 50 or 100 pages on a website.
Sure.
It's every page, and then you think about what pages are linked on what pages. And then you have to make sure those pages are linking the right pages with the new URL. So that was a big exercise in going in there and looking at it. And for them, I think it was great to see that these things are all integrated and they're also evolving. The SEO changes day to day. Sometimes, you're ranked very high SEO, then you'll see you're flagged for something. Why was I flagged for that? I don't even know why I was flagged for that. But if you're not checking on a daily, weekly, regular basis, you're not going to see that. So having them kind of relearn that this is what we should be doing for SEO and for your website, which actually has inspired them to help build a new website, which is great. So we're in the process of kind of redoing and getting a whole new website. Very excited about. And then from there, look at their Google ads. Similarly, things were done very cookie cutter. And that's fine. We said cookie cutter was giving you X result. If you're a baseball fan, there's that stat, wins above replacement. If you're doing this, you're an average player. You're doing what you need to do. And if what they were doing was just about, it was average, it was right where it should be, without negligence, right? It was okay. But she goes, well, what else could I be doing? So looking at, well, you could be expanding in your keywords and your targeting and where are you getting your clients from, and really looking at the data, doing a deep dive on who they're getting, who they're converting, and where they're getting them from. Because everything from what we're getting people who don't have the right insurance, we're getting people who are in a state that we can't serve.
Sure.
And so really it's soup to nuts through that. And now also LinkedIn, they've really started expanding into LinkedIn.
Oh, that's what I like to hear about. Yeah.
And that's their big one. And it's funny, I've been pushing, especially their principal psychologist, she's brilliant. She's a professor, she's spoken to media, she's done everything. And really try and get her to do that executive profile also, that let's launch your company.
And
You got
her
to start
thought
sharing your
leadership.
company. And then this all becomes a bigger picture. But like, again, keeping it bite-sized, because if I said on the day one, I'm going to do your SEO, your LinkedIn, your this, your that, I don't have time. Like I said, I have a daughter.
It's got to be manageable and realistic.
Exactly. And then for them, so their budget, if they want to make sure they're saving money, they want to spend, but they don't want to spend, they don't want to spend 20% of their revenue on marketing. Totally understand that. Let's keep this incremental. Let's build this. Let's get momentum. And so far, we're seeing those results. We're seeing, especially on the data side, all the data is showing great things. We're still working through some of the conversion aspects. There's definitely some, Google technical things still to fix. But no, we're really excited to see kind of a soup to nuts revitalization of a brand like that through digital marketing. It's been really exciting for me.
That's great. Well, you're such a wealth of information. Thank you so much for joining me today, Brett. Is the best way for people to reach you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is the best. My name is Brett Spielberg. I know it's down there in the ticker. Always happy to accept anyone. Always happy to be reached out to. My email also, brettspielberg@gmail.com. Just first name, last name. I'm very lucky to get that.
Easy. Keep it simple.
Absolutely. Always happy to speak with other folks in marketing. Always happy to try and connect with people. It's just a great industry. It's with some great people in here, and really want to make sure that, we continue, and with all the negativity people say about PR, really want to put it out there, like the positivity, the ethical way to do things, and make sure that we're putting out the best representation of our industry.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on. And everyone else, please go to my website at wantleverage.com, download a free tip sheet, make your C-suite stand out on LinkedIn. And I'll see you next time on another edition of PR Patter.